This is sort of a corollary argument. We'll call this 9b. So 9a is if Sola Scriptura is genuinely the Christian rule of faith, and we would expect the earliest Christians, the apostles, and their successors to teach it explicitly. 9b is that it wouldn't appear for over 1,000 years, right? So he sort of gives this approach to it. Well, Cameron, I'm not sure if you're aware of this. Papal infallibility is a Roman Catholic doctrine, also not found in the first 1,000 years of Christian history. The first hints of it might appear in the 13th century. It is not until the 19th century, the 1800s, when the American Civil War was happening, that the Roman Catholic Church officially affirmed papal infallibility at Vatican I. 1860s. Let me show it for you. Decrees of the First Vatican Council. This says 1868. It was 1869 to 1870. Here, there you go, December 1869. This is Vatican I, a council that was called by the Roman Catholic Church. And I'm going to read for you here point 9 of chapter 4 here on the infallible teaching authority of the Roman Pontiff. Therefore, faithfully adhering to the tradition received from the beginning of the Christian faith to the glory of God our Savior, for the exaltation of the Catholic religion, for the salvation of the Christian people, with the approval of the Sacred Council, we teach and define as divinely revealed dogma that when the Roman Pontiff speaks ex cathedra, that is, when, in the exercise of his office as shepherd and teacher of all Christians, in virtue of his supreme apostolic authority, he defines a doctrine concerning faith or morals to be held by the whole Church, he possesses, by the divine assistance promised to him in Blessed Peter, that infallibility which the divine Redeemer willed his church to enjoy in defining doctrine concerning faith or morals. Therefore, such definitions of the Roman Pontiff are of themselves, and not by the consent of the church, irreformable. Vatican I, 1869 to 1870. That is when the Roman Catholic Church affirmed papal infallibility. You have hints and clues of it as early as maybe the 13th century. Even the Council of Trent doesn't talk about it. The closest the Council of Trent, which was the response to the Protestant Reformation, gets is this. Here's what I found when doing some keyword searches for the relevant terms. There is sort of this throwaway comment about perfection of the Catholic faith. So here it is. This is the fifth session. That our Catholic faith, without which it is impossible to please God, may, errors being purged away, continue in its own perfect and spotless integrity. That's the closest I've found of anything like infallibility. And it's certainly not about papal infallibility, but it's also not a confirmation of infallibility, but inerrancy. It's not that it couldn't err, but that it hasn't erred. Let me read it again. Note this distinction. To be inerrant means that it is without error. To be infallible means that it is impossible to err. So here it is, Council of Trent, 5th session, that our Catholic faith, without which it is impossible to please God, may, errors being purged away, continue in its own perfect and spotless integrity. That's simply a claim of doctrinal inerrancy, and only after errors have been kicked out. So there are errors that do come from within. I've got more to say on that concept a little later for one of Cameron's arguments. But the point here is that when Cameron says it's a doctrine you don't find in the first 1,000 years, he is on no moral high ground, because papal infallibility is also one that doesn't show up for 1,800 years. 1,800 years. Now, I don't know if he knew this or not. There are times in which Cameron doesn't know what the Roman Catholic Church teaches or when it was officially taught. Let me give you one such example. In Cameron's announcement video, when he announced that he converted to the Roman Catholic faith and he went on Matt Fradd's Pints with Aquinas, he talks about his view of hell. And my heart just went out to the guy because I was watching this, and after this little bit, I turned off because it was apparent to me that Cameron's reasons, this was at the very start when he announced. This is before he made a bunch of YouTube videos talking about his reasons for why he became Roman Catholic. My heart went out to the guy because I realized he hadn't done his homework. He hadn't really done a deep dive, a scholarly academic deep dive into the theological doctrines and dogmas. Now, maybe he converted to Roman Catholicism because he thinks the architecture is beautiful, or this sense and richness of a tradition that so many, say, warehouse Baptists, seeker-sensitive church people, they might feel like, oh, this isn't anything that has a deep tradition behind it. Maybe that appealed to him. There is one video I've seen where he talks about the beauty, and that's what drew him in. But he hadn't done a doctrinal deep dive. And I want you to observe this almost embarrassing interaction between him as a now Roman Catholic and Matt Fradd.
And he actually rattled off some really interesting arguments for universalism.
Okay.
And my journey as a Protestant had been sort of going in the direction of annihilationism toward universalism. I was always at least what I would call a hopeful universalist. So I was hopeful that everyone would be saved.
Sort of Bishop Robert Barron's view.
Exactly. And so what I've come to recently is that hopeful universalism is more consistent with the Catholic understanding, or just the traditional. It's not. Most Protestants are accept the traditional view as well, eternal conscious torment. Mm-hmm. But what I saw is that hopeful universalism seems to be a better fit on the traditional view, as opposed to the annihilationist
so if you had
view.
To choose one.
So here's my hope. Here's my hope: is that hell will eventually.
So here's his hope:
be emptied. That people will eventually come to see that it's silly to remain in sin.
Yeah, so I don't think you can maintain that as a Catholic.
Okay.
Yeah. I think you can maintain a hopeful universalism as Barron does. I think Barron is
I don't know what his view is.
Orthodoxy, but to deny eternal conscious torment, I don't think is within the realms of orthodoxy.
What is his? Do you mind if I just ask?
Well, I don't want to speak on behalf.
Yeah. So the point here is Cameron states what his view is. Boy, I've been thinking about this, and this is where I've come to. And Matt Fradd's like, no, you can't believe that as a Roman Catholic. That's not consistent. So it's both sad and funny that Cameron here would take the time, join this new denomination, not realize what he was getting himself into, that he was no longer allowed to believe these certain things, at least publicly, that now he had to bend the knee to the Roman magisterium.